I'm Dolly Curtis, and today I'm at the Bradley Hubbell House in Easton, Connecticut, which is my hometown, and with me is Lois Bloom, who is the president of the Historic Society, and we're about to show you a wonderful project, Lois, that I know you had a lot to do with.
Yes, I have. It's been a long time. We've been working on this for almost 3 years now, and started in 1997 when the house became vacant. Something that a lot of people say about Easton is that it's changing, right, Dolly?
Oh, it is changing while you're sleeping, Lois. They're building the houses.
You hear that all the time, that Easton is changing, and it's very, very true. Easton is changing in a lot of ways. But if you stand right here where we're standing and you look 180 degrees, nothing here has changed in more than 250 years.
I know the house, the Bradley Hubbell House, is going to be just about 200 years old.
Right. It was built in 1816. It was a farmhouse, and this was farmland. It was built by a man whose name is Alger Bradley and his wife Elizabeth, and they farmed the land. She made her own cheese. She made her own flax and cotton in the summer.
Oh,
and
wonderful.
She made her own wool in the winter, and they had 9 children, including a pair of twins, and in fact the entire family is buried just down the road at the
in the Gilbert
Center Street Cemetery across from Gilbertown. They're all buried
and
there.
was the reservoir wasn't that we were on Black Rock Turnpike, everyone, by the way, and that's a road that so many people know. It's a beautiful scenic road anyhow.
And originally the road was the very famous road that the British marched on their way to Danbury, to burn Danbury. And at that time, of course, there wasn't a reservoir, but there was the beautiful Aspetuck River. And the farm that the Bradleys farmed was on both sides of the road and on both sides of the Aspetuck
before
River.
the water.
Right. And
The reservoir.
they lived here through the 1800s. And then in about 1900, their younger son began to write a chronicle. He called it the Aspetuck Chronicles, in which he wrote down his recollections of having grown up here in this house. He wrote how his mother made her own candles, how she made her own soap. He wrote about his father and how he did the farming and how he made his own tools for doing the farming. And he wrote about how he went to school at what was then the Staples Academy, which is now the parish house of the Congregational Church. And he eventually became a selectman in town. He was a selectman at the time, which was about 1845, that was the great upheaval when Easton and Weston separated from each other and became 2 separate towns.
Right.
His name is John Diamond Bradley, and John Diamond was a selectman at that time, and he writes about that. He writes about, for example, the boat that used to come down the Aspetuck River that was the predecessor of the Bailey Circus with a band on it. And everybody would come out and watch the boat come down the river and play this music. So his chronicle has given us an enormous amount of information about how life was lived here.
Where is this chronicle? Is
years.
it part of the Historic Society papers?
Well, it is now. It was discovered by Priscilla Chatfield
Yes, Priscilla
at the Fairfield Historical Society, and the Fairfield Historical Society gave her permission to copy it. Priscilla and I are now in the process of transcribing it and putting it into a computer, and we hope to publish it.
Oh, how nice.
Yeah.
So now, were there just 2 families that lived in this house?
No,
the Bradley
that's
family
right.
and then the
That's
Hubbell
right.
family?
The Bradleys built it, as I said, in 1816, and their descendants continued to live here until they sold the property to BHC in 1914.
Which is the water company. We have to make sure everybody knows.
Bridgeport Hydraulic Company it was called then. And Bridgeport Hydraulic Company bought all of the land up and down. This was part of a huge tract of land that one of Alger Bradley's grandsons, I think, finally inherited and sold to Bridgeport Hydraulic Company. Now, a really important part of the history of this house is that after the water company bought the house, they hired a young man whose name was Franklin Hubbell. And
Mr. Hubbell?
Franklin Hubbell moved into this house in 1917. And that is really why the house is in such good condition today.
Because of Mr. Hubbell.
Yes, because he recognized and respected and preserved the integrity of the architectural details of the house and recognized its historic value. And so very, very little of the interior of the house or the exterior of the house has been changed.
That's what's wonderful, they say.
Yeah.
the restoration of it, the carpenters, the reason everybody felt that it would really
That's
deserve
right.
this attention
That's right.
is because so little has been changed in the
That's
75
right.
years Mr. Hubbell lived here. I used
It
to
is.
visit him. He was a friend of mine, and his daughter Pat is my friend, and I understood that he liked teenagers, so I used to bring my teenage daughter over and we'd sit and visit with him. He was really very well and very keen. He was in his 90s, and he was a selectman.
Well,
of
he
East-
died a few
Years ago.
months, a few months before he was 100 years old.
I knew he lived almost.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that. And
He
he had
died
a
at-
big garden that and he used to work very hard on it, and had a big party here.
Where was his garden?
Right here on the right-hand side. This whole field here to the right of where we're standing, and a big party here every July 4th. And in his 90s, when he got a little slower, actually he was very well when I used to visit him. Pat, his daughter, and Harold, his son-in-law, would come down and help with the garden. They would help, and Debbie, their daughter, everybody would help some of make it a little easier. But they always had a big party here. And I enjoyed visiting him, and it's fun for me to be here today and go through the rooms. We're going to show everybody some of this big project you're involved in.
Yeah, well, you keep saying that, Dolly.
Well, I know it's a big project because I live in an old house, and but I think it's one being done with the most care, just like the house has always been kept. The restoration project is being done with the greatest care. I want to tell the audience a little bit about how this house might be important to them. So, I thought you might
ahead.
address what your project is here, what you're hoping to do. And I know it's going to be over as many years, but
Well, we have a plan, a very well thought out plan that has 4 phases. And the very first phase was what we call preservation and stabilization. And the goal of the first phase was just to make sure the house does not deteriorate any further. And the biggest job we've been doing, and we've been very much involved in it in the last month and a half, is replacing the sills, which are the foundational structure, which you're going to see later. I'm sure you'll see photos of the new sills. The sills had been rotted from moisture damage over the years, and so they had to jack up the house and replace those sills. And now that 2 of the sills have been replaced, we're going to do a 3rd of them. The 4th is in good shape. That house will not fall down. It's there.
because of
Right.
space strengthening the whole foundation. What about the roof? Is the roof intact?
The roof is intact. The attic is an absolute gem of an
Really?
attic. It's beautiful, beautiful
see
wood,
that.
beautifully detailed. The roof, ideally, we would like to have a nice old shake roof on the house if somebody wants to donate a new roof for the house.
Lois, so how did you obtain the house?
Well, when we learned that the house was empty, we approached BHC, and we approached them at the perfect time because their plans were to renovate the house and to rent it. It was a source of income, like they rent all of the houses on their property around town.
I know they do.
But to their great credit, they agreed to put it on hold to give us the opportunity to raise the money that would be needed to begin the process of restoring the house. And so that's what we did. We spent 2 years raising almost $100,000, and they agreed to not just lease us the house, but also to lease almost 4 3/4 acres. So we really have a beautiful vista for the house.
That's true. And then beautiful reservoir across the way.
That's right.
And the overgrowth
That's
has been taken away now, so you can see it so much more.
That's
so
right. And as I said, the view now is just as it
180.
was 2 years ago,
Yeah, that-
200 years, over 200 years
Yeah, that
ago.
is a mesmerizing idea. So your
Yeah.
hope is in 10 years' time, or to make it into a living museum?
That's right. And we hope it to be very much a part of Easton, but also the larger community as well, because we are poised really at a very important highway that connects, well, ultimately Danbury, but Reading, then Easton, then Weston, then Fairfield and Bridgeport. So it really is a house that, it's not just any old house.
Right, it's right in the path of
That's
all the
exactly
communities.
right. It's in the path of history, and it's a house that can
love
just
that.
stand here and pull all of these communities together, because it represents how this part, this tiny part of New England,
Was lived.
was created and was
Settled,
lived.
and how people lived. And
That's
school
right.
groups will be able to come once you have
Right.
this
Well,
ready.
we have our
and-
Living History every August, and Living History right now takes place at the Adams Schoolhouse. But what we plan to do is add another week to Living History,
I
so
love
the
Living
children
History.
will come here, and they'll learn how kitchen activities and activities of daily living of all kinds, but mostly farm activities, because that's what this was. This was a living and working farm. And they'll learn how life was lived in the 1800s.
Well, I love this whole project because I used to come and visit Mr. Hubbell. I've driven by this house for about 25 years.
Lots of people have.
And it's a house you don't forget once you drive by. It has that wonderful window up in the
Oh, and the
attic.
window we found out. Now we've talked about that window on the north side as our window of opportunity.
Well, you have to drive by anyhow. People have to come and see what's going on with this restoration project, and they got to look up at that window on the north side.
That's right.
Because that is symbol of this house, and it's also the logo, isn't it, for the Historic Society?
That's right. You see it on the cover of our newsletter.
So this is where we are. We're going to go now and talk with some of the carpenters. Going to get to the soul of this project, and we're going to talk. Hopefully, we'll get to talk with Pat Hubbell this afternoon, who grew up here, and is a friend of mine and a wonderful poet and artist and every other wonderful thing. And then we'll give the people an idea of what it's like for the person who lived in the house for so many years.
That's right. That's wonderful.
And the people who are working. And we want to thank you, Lois, for making this happen, because I understand if it wasn't for your efforts, your determination, this project wouldn't even really have gotten to this first phase.
It still needs a lot of determination.
Any old house really does need a lot of determination. So we're going to move on, talk with the carpenters. Thank you for giving us this intro, and we want the public to know they can drive by and take a peek at what's going on here on Black Rock Turnpike.
Okay, that would be wonderful. And if they want to volunteer in any way, the number is 261-2090.
Okay, we want to let everyone know. So with me is my friend and a restoration architect and a man of many talents, Will Tressler, and I want to ask, Will, what part are you playing in this?
Well, when they started talking about this project, I thought it was quite interesting because it was a way to preserve some of the character of Easton, which I would like to see preserved in any way possible. This represents a house from an era when Easton was being settled, and looks like Easton was quite prosperous at this time because there are a lot of houses from this vintage. So I was quite interested in it and volunteered my services, and about 2 years later the project began to gain momentum, and I got drawn in deeper and deeper, and here I am.
So are you going to be sort of an overseeing consultant to this?
Well, we have people who know a lot more about this kind of work than I do, but I do have a lot of experience working with historic houses, mainly from this particular vintage. This one, as you know, is from 1816.
Right.
A lot of the houses I work on are from 1780 up to about 1840, 1850. Federal houses, Greek Revival houses, and do a lot of work on these houses from the standpoint of preservation, additions, and restoring of the interior and the detailing and so on. So it fitted right into what I do as a regular.
I know you've really spent a lot of time working on wonderful restorations all around the community. What I like about this house, it's not just for Easton, it's a house that people in all the towns will be driving by.
Yeah, it's a very visible location. Many towns have their historic houses, but they're tucked away or sometimes surrounded by an awful lot of modern development. The advantage here is we have a house that it's sitting in a vista that hasn't changed substantially in the 100 and some years that it's existed.
Yeah, 200 years, actually.
Yeah, almost 200 years, I should say. Yep.
And so the whole vista's been the same, except for the water being a river, and now it's dammed up for the reservoir.
That's right. And all of the houses around are from the 19th century. When the hydraulic company took over this area, all development stopped. So all of the houses in the area just fit right into the scheme of things, pretty much as they were 150, 175 years ago.
So that's why the house is worth this whole effort.
It really makes it very special, yep.
Okay, well, we're thrilled to have Will Tressler working on this project because he's a special part of Easton, and you've done you've added a lot of nice things to town because of your design ability.
Thank you.
So, and also your wonderful music talent that we can never, ever not, mention the Jackson Pike Skifflers. So thank you, Will, for helping with this project. And I know with you on board, it'll be done to the best it can possibly be done. And I just hope the whole community supports it so that we'll be able to continue it.
We need a lot of support from the whole community. It's a big project. Thank you, Dolly.
Take a while. Thanks, Will, for stopping by.
You're welcome. Okay, bye.
Well, with me is Pat Hubbell, who's my friend in a wonderful part of Easton, and guess what? Pat grew up in this house.
Absolutely.
That's what makes it so much fun.
Home from the hospital, and here I was.
So you were here
1928.
1928.
I was born in July 1928.
And then your dad was here to 98?
Oh, until he died in 96.
96.
He was here from the time he graduated from college till he died in 96. 4 months before he would have been 100.
So I used to come visit him myself. I remember
Yeah.
being in the living room with his dog. He had a little
Fox terrier.
Fox terrier.
Yes,
He loved that.
smooth-coated fox terrier.
He loved the little dog.
He was cute.
And he loved the garden.
Oh yeah, he always had a great garden out by the barn. There used to be a wonderful rose garden along the paddock
As
where
well?
my horse was. There was a whole big long rose garden. And then years ago, when my mother was alive, where the vegetable garden was here used to be a big perennial garden. They had lovely perennials.
Oh, really?
4 big beds of perennials.
You told me when you were a child you used to be able to take a rowboat.
I did. I got a rowboat for my 11th birthday, a little white rowboat named the Patricia, and I used to go out on the reservoir with it. Those were in the days when it was a little freer around the watershed.
And you said you used to ride a
was
horse, too, up over
Yes.
the ridge.
I had my horse. When I was 4, I got a pony, and it used to wander around here, and we kept it loose so it wandered all around the yard and the fields here. There wasn't that much traffic then. And one thing funny that happened one Halloween, a truck driver was coming down the Black Rock Turnpike, and he got a flat tire. It was night, and he saw this black shape out there, and he thought it was a bear, and he slept in his truck all night because of this bear.
was
And
your
in the
pony?
morning, he realized it was our pony, Tiny. He was such a cute pony.
So you really just had the freedom to
We did. We
have...
kind of had the run of the place. You know, it was almost like the whole world was ours here.
How
With all
wonderful.
the orchards
Are
and
you
the
happy,
nurseries and
though?
everything.
To see this happen?
Oh, I am, yeah. I think it'll be great. Yeah, it's lovely to see it brought back. I was so afraid that, you know, that they might even tear it down because they had left it so long without doing anything with it.
Oh, it was
But then
deteriorating.
yeah, it just seems great to have this done. It'll be wonderful because
Now-
it's a beautiful old house.
And it's a great vista that
Yeah,
it has,
it is.
looking out
Yeah,
onto the
out
roadway.
onto the reservoir. I used to, when I was little, when I was first writing poetry, there was a maple tree out near the road, and it had a limb that came out like that, and I used to climb up and sit on that limb, and I would look out and see the birds and the trucks go by and geese on the reservoir. And one year there were 7 swans on the reservoir. And one time I remember seeing a fox playing in the field, and I wrote a poem about the fox called Prey Ballet. So that was one of the first times I started to write poetry, was doing that.
So, Pat, the whole environment of the house has had a big influence on your writing.
It has, definitely.
Your career and everything you've done.
True.
I just see
Yeah.
now. We're standing
And
next
this
to the
house, yes.
dollhouse here.
Right, this was built, I guess it was built for my sister maybe, and I think she used it as a dollhouse, but when I started to use it, I turned it into a nature museum.
Which would be more your thing, a
Right,
nature
yeah.
museum.
I had all sorts of stuff there. I had snake skins
Snake
and
skins?
birds' nests and
Oh.
rocks and pressed flowers and information about birds. And my grandmother had nice shelves built in it for me, and I had a little table with chairs. And
Oh, how
it was great. I
nice.
spent a lot of time there.
So you had a sister and a brother and yourself.
Yeah.
And your dad always worked for the,
Yes, he was always the hydraulic company manager.
but no one said this yet, but didn't he plant most of the apple trees that were
Well, it was his idea to start an orchard there. He majored in pomology at college, which is orchard management and fruit growing
at the University of Connecticut?
at University of Massachusetts.
Okay, UMass.
Yeah. And he had the idea of starting an orchard here on some of this open land. It was good
So is
hillside country for growing apples, so he started Aspetuck Valley Orchards.
So Aspetuck Valley Barn that still stands today.
That's where he started to sell fruit there. It was one of the first roadside stands in the state, actually.
Really? He was such a nice guy. I enjoyed
Yeah,
visiting him.
he
Nobody's
was nice.
mentioned that he was the selectman in Easton.
Yeah,
They
that's
forgot.
right. He was selectman for a while.
And the other family that lived here before your family lived here, he was a selectman in Easton,
Oh, was
Bradley.
he? Bradley.
And your dad was the selectman in Easton, so
Right.
both were involved
Oh,
in the
that's
community.
interesting. I didn't know he was
First I've
selectman.
heard that. Well, we're so glad you were able to. I know you live right nearby. You've
Yeah.
grown up in the house
I
and then
grew up
ended
in the
up
house
living
and
there.
lived just a half a mile or so up the top of the hill. But I was here, I mean, after I grew up, because I would come down to see my folks all the time. I was certainly here 3 or 4 times a week all
Right.
the time up until my dad died.
Yeah, I know you used to come help him with the garden,
Yeah.
and he threw a big party,
Yeah.
didn't he, in the 4th
Oh,
of
he
July?
had big parties every holiday. He used to have a big lobster party every 4th of July. But he had big family parties every single holiday. Memorial Day, 4th of July,
I
Labor
remember all
Day,
that.
Thanksgiving, Christmas, and Easter.
Oh, he liked to do
He
it.
liked big parties.
And he must have liked to cook and
He
prepare.
did like to cook.
And he liked teenagers. That's why I used to
Yeah,
bring my
he did.
teenagers, you told me. He really,
He
and he
did.
let you ride a tractor, you told me, and your children too, all around. He was
Oh.
very,
I don't remember that, but we used to practice driving a
Practice
car. When we
driving,
were
Lord.
young, we used to drive around the fields here to learn to drive a car.
yeah, he gave young people
gave-
that
yes.
feeling that they could do it
Right,
without having to be
yeah.
afraid.
Right. He taught Jeff, my son, to drive that way, and
I
also Debbie
remember.
by sitting with him in the car and driving around the upper field.
And that's what I remember about your dad. Well, here we are. We're the person who grew up in the Bradley Hubbell house, and it's just wonderful that you're here and being able to give us some personal anecdotes. And
Well, it's a great place. I'm looking forward to what happens. You
Well,
know, it'd be fun to see it when it's really finished and furnished and used.
we're going to need a
Terrific.
lot of people to pull together to
So
have
it's
this
certainly
happen.
a very interesting house, and a lot of interesting things happen there. Nice parties.
Good vibes from
Good
this
vibes,
house.
yeah,
Well, let's hope it
definitely.
can move forward then and
I'm
become
sure
a
it
living
will.
museum.
Yeah, I'm sure it will.
Thanks, Pat.
Okay, thank you.
Well, with me is the heart of the project. This is Jim DeCuffa, who is the project restoration carpenter on the Bradley Hubbell house. Hi, Jim.
Hi, Dolly. How are you?
I've been watching you work on these jobs for years, and so now this is your thing. You're really doing your thing here. It's what you're so good at.
This is the pinnacle. This is the pinnacle of.
You live here in Easton. You love these places, and this is your skill. And you're working with a few other people?
I'm working with Daniel Magner, another local contractor here from town, and a preservationist, environmentalist, as well as my nephew, Randall Gould. And we have a wonderful team, and we're working really well together, and we're enjoying this project immensely.
Are you going to be able to show me some of the details? I know we wouldn't have time to see them all, but maybe just this corner of the house, what you've discovered and what you're doing here?
Yes, we're standing at the southeast corner of the house here, and this is particularly interesting. One of our earliest project was a volunteer effort. We had a nice turnout one Saturday afternoon a couple of months back, and we took down a pre-existing screen porch and the front porch on the house, which was probably late 19th century, turn of the century. In doing so, we made several very interesting discoveries. Right here, we uncovered the original bulkhead entrance to the basement. You can see the foundation for it here, and you can see where this rough rubble wall has been walled in what was the entry. Over here, where we took cedar shingles off in dismantling the screen porch, we uncovered flush horizontal siding, and you can see the shadow line there following the rake of the roof where it's never been painted, and hand-wrought nails, which are indigenous to all the construction in this house. All of the nails are hand-wrought, and the frame is red oak and white oak, as are the sills.
So does that date the house? You were saying the different wood that they use in the different centuries, so that gives you the idea of all the construction eras?
Yeah, and it's also a regional thing. The further back you go, the larger the timbers you had, and the more plentiful the preferred species were, in this case white oak and red oak. And as they depleted the oak, they moved into chestnut. And about the time chestnut became extinct around the turn of the century, we were into Doug fir and contemporary framing.
Oh, so you can really, everything gets dated by the type of wood. I know the type of nails.
Yeah.
They've all
Yeah.
changed.
And then as far as the regional thing goes, the further northeast you go, you get into pine. Because down here we have the hardwoods. You go further north, you have the softwoods. Up in Maine, Vermont, most of the frames are made of hewn pine.
Well, this big project that you've spent the last month putting these sills that were rotted on
Yes.
the bottom, and you brought in some of this new wood. Is it taken from new construction? I mean, this wood that you've brought in, that you've jacked the house up and...
These sills here, this front sill that was the first one we replaced, was custom sawn for this project.
Oh,
This is white oak to match the original, and it's been treated to repel insects and decay,
really?
and we are going to lower the grade, so this should last rather indefinitely with proper care on the house.
What type of construction is that? I've never seen it before except in parts of my old house. It's plaster with...
This is plaster and lath. You can see where the plaster comes through the lath. It forms these keys, and that's what holds your plaster wall.
And this is the this upright is the corner key?
This is a post. This is the corner post. This is a post and beam frame. In addition to replacing the sills, we had a significant repair here on this corner where the roof line came in up there on the screen porch. It's been leaking over the years and leaking down this corner post, and this was completely rotted on the south and east face. The back of it was intact and still carrying the load. Because of that, we were able to repair it in place. To replace this post would be a major undertaking because all of the framing elements are tied into it in a post and beam frame.
My.
So what we were able to do was remove all of the rot, much like a dentist does with your teeth, and we
Routed it out?
with a large drill bit and a large half-inch drill, primarily, and a chisel, a hammer and a chisel. Removed all of the rot, following whatever contour was left of sound wood. Then we sculpted this corner post to fit what was left of the original post, this corner repair, that is. Incidentally, this is spruce. This is a lighter, softer wood. It's a vintage piece that came from some other
Oh, so you're one of
building.
those people that keeps all these things from other buildings when you can get a hold of them.
Well, we
just need it.
we have sources to find them when we need them. This was an enclosed porch, or
So
an
that's why-
open porch.
You said that's why the paint, these doors have stayed so well over so much time without being
They've always been covered. Yes.
by screen porch.
This whole southern end of the building has taken a beating over the years.
And that window's not even there anymore.
The wonderful oval window on the north end, there was one here. It's been replaced over the years.
Long time.
This whole side has been reshingled. We have chestnut or oak shingles on the gable, which match the barn, and the L on the back of the house. And then these shingles that were in the screen porch are just conventional cedar perfections.
What are these flat boards? They look pretty important. These that are underneath these shingles.
Yes,
That is original?
These are the flush horizontal boards that we uncovered on that end.
I think you're doing a fabulous job. I mean, it's just what you love to do. It's the thing that really comes from inside you.
Absolutely. You know, there's a little bit of preservationist in all of us, and
More in you, though, than in most, I think. And you
Well-
have the patience, I mean, and the foresight.
it really does. It takes a lot of patience. It's a whole different ball game than conventional construction.
I'm just hoping that people, when you're driving Black Rock Turnpike, Jim's going to be here, Jim DeCuffer, for quite a while, and Randy Gould and Dan Magner, because they've got a lot of work ahead of them. So if you're driving by, if this is your interest, I know you don't want to get stopped every minute, but if somebody wants to stop and take a look at what's going on here, they should know that they be welcome.
They'd be more than welcome, and
Who knows? They might even know something about this house. They might have come by with some good information.
that's right. We're always open to new information, and we're always open to new sources of funding.
Yeah, because this is a big
And,
project. It's gonna-
This phase of the project is using up pretty much the bulk of what we've managed to raise so far, and we've got a long ways to go.
Right.
We've got several buildings and
Other outhouse building, right? There's a barn and a wood.
barn, carriage shed, the wonderful playhouse, which I think
We did. Pat talked about it.
yeah.
It was a nature museum that for her, she used it.
that was her nature museum.
That's
Oh,
what she
nice.
was saying. Well, and it's a beautiful piece of property. We are trying to make this happen, and it'll be something for everyone because there'll be a museum open to everyone.
Absolutely.
So come by, say hello to Jim DeCuffer. If you know anything about the house, please, Lois Bloom would love to hear about it. The Historical Society would love to hear. And thanks. And I'm going to stop by regularly and see how you're doing.
Thank you, Dolly. We appreciate your support.
Okay? Good luck with this big job.
Thanks.